What's up, YouTube? I'm Brett from Rants. As always, guys, if y'all enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave that comment down below. Alright, so this is our episode 2 review of Loki. Overall, I felt like this is another solid episode in this series. I don't feel like it was as good as episode 1. A lot of people's complaint in episode 1 was that it was very dialogue heavy. But I felt like that dialogue was needed. It was action dialogue in that it was needed to advance the story forward, to advance this particular Loki forward. It was to teach him who he was, what his mission was, rather than just be the same version of Loki that we had seen in the MCU. They needed a more introspective Loki, rather than one that is still mixed up in this arrogance that is blinding to him. So I felt like episode 1, a lot of the episode 1 dialogue was very needed. Episode 2, I can't say that though. I felt like episode 2 felt like a dog chasing his tail in a lot of ways. A lot of the dialogue was excessive. It didn't get to the point fast enough. And a lot of it was just factually incorrect in so many different ways. And it just baffles the imagination as to why the writers would even put it in there. But that being said, let's go ahead and get into episode 2. Look, you're at the Renaissance Fair. You see the Minutemen coming in through the portal. And who is there to wait on them? An Agatha Harkness lookalike. One that sounds like her, that has the mannerisms of her, and really just even smiles like her, which is so odd. When the Minutemen were going into that tent to face the evil Loki variant that had been killing them, I could not help but feel, still be distracted a little bit by how that could have been a possible Agatha Harkness callback. Of course, it was another actress that was playing the part this time, a younger version of her, but it would make sense for Agatha Harkness to feel comfortable in this Renaissance festival, since she was from the time of the Salem witch trials, which was what, 1600s. So I just was, it's one of those things. I wonder if that was actually a callback or if that was intentional, non-intentional, but it sure felt intentional, which I thought was kind of a cool little moment for this episode. Overall, Mobius was probably my biggest complaint this episode. He looked so energized in episode 1. He looked like he loved what he did, and he was very good at it. He was very smart. He was capable of handling anything that was brought before him. He was one of the best detectives that the TVA had to offer. And it just felt like he was there to show Loki really where his downfalls really were, and that he really cared about Loki. Episode 2, I didn't feel that way. Episode 2, I felt like he felt very tired. There was, of course, that episode or a moment where in the episode where he was talking to Loki about water skiing in the 90s, and how that just for that one moment felt so fresh, but it was something that he, as a time cop, basically, would never be able to do as long as he worked for the TVA. And of course, there's always that question of what happens to retired cops of the TVA? Do they go and they live their normal life? Is it like the MIB, the Men in Black? Do they get that little thing to the eyes that blanks out every bit of their memories, and then they go on and live their lives normal? That doesn't seem like something that can really happen to someone who works at the TVA. And I'll tell you the reason why is because that wouldn't just their presence affect the sacred timeline. I would, if I had to choose, I would say yes, it probably would. So, is there something a little bit more sinister that goes on with these? With basically retirement. So, but overall, I just felt like Owen Wilson's performance this episode. He looked like an old Owen Wilson in this episode. He looked like, and therefore Mobius felt that way. Felt like a very drained, one that really was more threatening towards Loki. Reminding him that he had uh, one more chance, and if he didn't fulfill his mission on this, that his life literally depended upon it. I thought he felt a lot colder this episode than he did in previous episodes. And plus, he wasn't as sharp. In a lot of ways, he was standing toe to toe with Loki and being able to call out Loki's BS. Now, he did have a moment when Loki was kind of giving him a lot of was basically lying to him, stalling for time, and he did call out Loki for that one moment. But at the same time, to a certain extent, Loki was correct, even if he was using what he was saying as a stall tactic about following that captured Minuteman by the Loki variant that is evil, and that it was a trap. And Loki tells them, if y'all go outside of this tent, if y'all go and y'all hunt her down, she's just going to use that as a means to kill y'all. And to a certain extent, he was very, very right about that. But again, in the context of it, he was trying to get to see the timekeepers. He was trying to use that as a vantage point for him to speak directly to the timekeepers, something that Mobius was never going to allow. That being said, the timekeepers. Has anybody ever noticed that one of those timekeepers looks very similar to Kang the Conqueror? Now, we all know that Jonathan Majors will be playing Kang the Conqueror just in Loki. He's already being cast for this role. I just find it very strange that one of these timekeepers looks exactly like him. So many things about the timekeepers that is very odd, anyways. But I feel like the ideas that Loki brought forth this episode with some of the dialogue that he had with Mobius kind of leads me to believe that these timekeepers are not real, and that maybe Kang the Conqueror might be over all of this. This might be a Wizard of Oz like situation where that the people that work for the TVA are believing that it's these grand wizards, these timekeepers, these uh, uh, people who are able to, or these entities that are godlike, are able to, create a time loop that is uh, there forever and is to never be disturbed because they say so. That everything happens in this sacred timeline because they choose it to be that way. Um, it all kind of feels, like I said, like a Wizard of Oz moment where Loki's going to pull down this curtain and you're going to find out that it's just a man. And in that situation, I kind of maybe feel like it's going to be Jonathan Majors as Kang the Conqueror who is going to be behind all of this. I don't necessarily believe that the TVA or the so-called good guys in this. I believe that they're led by someone that's evil. Maybe someone, maybe they're of course they're doing so blindly, but that's kind of something that Loki was trying to bring out this episode, anyways, is that y'all are following these timekeepers blindly, when even Mobius admits he had never seen the timekeepers. I don't know who sees the timekeepers. It feels like only Mobius's boss is one of the few who has actually seen these timekeepers. Um, and for Mobius, this detective that's been there for who knows how long, not to be able to have even caught a glimpse of them, spoke to them in any way, it just feels kind of like what Loki was saying, where it almost kind of feels a little cultish, where that everyone in the TVA just blindly believes that the timekeepers are over this sacred timeline, and never question it, never doubt it, never question why they don't see these timekeepers, why these timekeepers don't give them orders specifically. It feels like a scam in a lot of ways, and I think that's something that maybe Lady Loki or Loki himself are going to be able to really determine and kind of pull that curtain back a little bit later on. Or at least that's where I'm hoping that they will go with this. But look, I'll go ahead and I'm going to start with some of my big problems with this show so far. You have the Minutemen, who are supposed to be trained to take down time variants. And it feels like they're not capable of taking down a jaywalker, much less a time variant. It's weird. They handled Loki so well, but yet when they are completely and totally helpless against Lady Loki. And for what reason? It's like they've got those little stick things that doesn't do any good, that they never use. They never employ the same tactics as what they did with Loki himself. They always get stuck in this situation where that they get overpowered and murdered, and just really have no chance whatsoever. Um, and for what reason? Why do they not use the exact same time tactics that they used on Loki, where that they press that button and time itself stops, that person freezes in time and is incapable of fighting back. But instead, no, they're like, you know what? We're going to do this hand to hand combat against this Loki, and we're going to somehow act like this Loki got the jump on us. No, this Loki didn't get the jump on you. This Loki is no more capable than the Loki that they took down. It is only the means of how they fight this Loki that is different, and they just feel so insignificant. You would think after, I don't know, eons of doing this same job that they would be more capable, and they almost kind of feel like stormtroopers in a way, like they're just there to die, like they couldn't hit the backside of a barn. That's the way they feel. They feel useless in a lot of different ways. But yeah, I mean, there's that, and then there's the discrepancies that happen this episode. Okay, you have Loki, um, coming to Mobius and telling Mobius, you know what, in events where, everyone is killed, it doesn't, you can go there, if you are a variant, you can go there and live out your days and in that one moment forever and ever, and the TVA wouldn't even know that you were there simply because there's nothing you can possibly do to that event that is going to create another timeline, because at that point everyone dies. There's nothing that changes with it. It is forever, basically, I guess, in that moment. um, it was just very, I don't know, it just took me by surprise that the TVA, that is supposed to be very knowledgeable over how this sacred timeline works. They were even quizzing that little time cartoon was even, or clock cartoon was even quizzing Loki at the beginning of this episode about what to do in specific situations. Yet for some reason, it never dawned on them that maybe, just maybe, after, in a place like Pompeii, or in a place where, there's been this destruction and supposedly no one lives, which I'll get to that a little bit later. That basically these time variants or fugitives can just hang out there forever and do whatever they want to, and never have to worry about the TVA recognizing that they're there because of some kind of time variation that takes place there. Because whatever's going to happen there is going to happen there, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. So I just kind of feel like, what an odd thing for the TVA to be so completely unaware of for all these eons, but yet little old Loki can figure out something so simple, which should have been, really, to be honest, common sense for basically these Minutemen, or these time cops all in general. It just, I don't know. When he said that to Mobius, and I'm thinking Mobius is supposed to be, kind of be playing this chess match with, this version of Loki, and he felt so dumb in that moment, and he looked so dumb in that moment. Like, oh my God, I cannot believe that you found this little discrepancy out, when it's a discrepancy that should have been found out a long time ago. It should have been just kind of common sense. It should have been where they looked for that Loki to begin with. I mean, it just blew my mind that Loki had to even describe something like that for them. That being said, let's go to the Pompeii situation. Loki, to prove his point about the about that, doesn't matter what you do in that moment. You can stay, if you're a time fugitive, you can stay in that moment, and it's not going to create an alternate timeline, no matter what you do in that situation. So to prove it, they go to Pompeii, Italy, where, of course, what is it? Mount Vesuvius erupts and kills, destroys Pompeii. He says in there that everyone was killed who was there. That was not the case. So therefore, that is a bad situation to be in, to prove your point, because there were a lot of refugees from Pompeii and the surrounding areas that did survive the eruption. So for them to make that reference, that historical reference, that was just factually wrong, just baffled me. I mean, when they said it, I was like, wait a second, that don't sound right. There was actually survivors of Pompeii. Yeah, Pompeii itself was wiped off the map, but there were survivors from there and from the surrounding towns that were able to escape. So it just felt very odd that they would make this weird historical lapse in that regard. And another lapse that Loki made in this episode was, when he was trying to make his point by ruining Mobius's salad with the salt and the pepper and all that stuff. He says, at the fall of Asgard, when Asgard was destroyed, he says, I could have pushed the Hulk off the bridge and killed him, basically, and it would not have created an alternate timeline. That is another factually incorrect statement. It would have changed an alternate timeline because after Asgard was destroyed, the Hulk went on to perform his duties in the MCU. So anything, if he died right then, he would no longer have been able to have done that, and that would have been a situation that might have changed how history or how the MCU history turned out. Might even have changed whether Thanos won or didn't win in a lot of ways. So I mean, there is a lot of little things like that that just irked me about this episode. Is bad examples, just bad examples. There's plenty of situations where entire towns or entire civilizations have been wiped out. Um, and for them not to use those historical accounts instead of the one at Pompeii blew my mind that they did that. And the whole knocking the Hulk off the bridge thing was just factually wrong. And for them to even use that, for the writers to say something like that and to use it basically, it feels like just as a really cool blow off line, um, just feels really stupid and just not needed in a lot of ways. So yeah, that was a huge problem for me. I just felt like bad analogies, bad 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 idea to bring Pompey and the Hulk into that conversation. Yeah, it was just oh my goodness, it just blew my mind at how they completely and totally screwed that up. Um, but that being said, hey, they wanted a cool scene with the volcano erupting behind them and Loki letting out goats and calling himself the god of mischief to the local population. So, I mean, I guess it was a cool scene in that way. I guess that's what it was supposed to be there for. But overall, it did not work for me. Now, another problem I had with Loki this episode was when they get to that. What was it? What was that place called? Roxcart. Roxcart. When they got to Roxcart in 2050, in this place that was completely and totally wiped off the map by a hurricane, no survivors, they get there. What is the very first thing that Loki does? He uses his powers to dry himself off. Yet, when he comes across female Loki, and he's literally fighting for his life, he chooses not to use any of his powers, any of his abilities, and instead plays defense the entire time, allowing her to get the best of him in a lot of ways. I thought, you know what? Loki, as being as smart as he is and as the trickster god, to not even pull some form of a trick or illusion or anything at that moment felt off for who he was as a character and what we've seen about him in his past. So that was another one of those big discrepancies. Another thing that drove me crazy this episode is the idea that they keep calling him the Lesser Loki. Why is he the lesser Loki to Lady Loki in any form or fashion? They should be almost the exact same in almost every single way. Yes, she's going to have some powers that might be different to him, different, different timeline, different actions that have taken place. But at the same time, overall, they should have the same mindset, the same mental capacity. But for some reason, Mobius and everyone else keeps calling him the Lesser Loki. If you believe that he's the Lesser Loki, then what use is he to you? If you believe that he is incapable of taking down Lady Loki by himself, and that he's just as helpless as the other Minutemen when it comes to that situation, then at the end of the day, why are you keeping him there? If you really, truly believe that, now they can say, well, they're trying to do that to motivate him, to make him want to take her down, to prove that he is the dominant one, the more capable one. but it didn't feel that way to me. I tell you what it felt like to me. It felt like one of those MCU Disney moments where that the woman is always going to be better, never equal, always better moments. That's the way it felt to me. Um, not needed MCU. Very lowbrow way I kind of look at it. Just not needed. Um, Not warranted in any way. I mean, we haven't seen her do anything that's that spectacular. Besides, take down a bunch of stupid Minutemen that really Loki or anybody else could have taken down in those particular situations as well. So I'm like, yeah, didn't really prove anything at all. Another thing, why did she kidnap? Why did female Loki kidnap that Minuteman? Um, Made no sense at all. Literally made no sense. Uh, Loki says, well, she did it so that we would follow her. But when they find that Minuteman, she says that, well, that Loki was wanting me to tell her where the timekeepers were. The timekeepers. A lowly person or soldier on that in the TVA knows where the timekeepers are and was able to tell Lady Loki where the timekeepers were located. Makes absolutely no sense to me since Mobius himself hadn't even seen the timekeepers. But yet somehow this woman knows exactly where they're located. I don't know how the order of things works at the TVA, but it seems kind of odd that that probably one of the best detectives that the TVA has to offer doesn't has never seen the timekeepers, doesn't know anything about them, but yet a lowly soldier, not one that's in control of anything or over any kind of part of the situation, is capable of knowing where the timekeepers are located when Mobius, it's not. Seemed odd to me. They never clarified either of did she want the TVA to follow her, like what Loki said, or was she just extracting information out of that one? Or was she doing both in a lot of ways? It kind of felt like to a certain extent she was doing both. But yeah, I mean, overall, there were some cool things. I thought the bombing of the TVA was really cool, or bombing of the different timelines. At this point, it feels like they've got bigger concerns than just tracking down this variant Loki, and that is trying to fix the timeline as it is with all these bombings in all these different worlds, different times. I thought it was really cool that they picked specific planets that in specific places and time to do for her to do her bombings. That was interesting. A little factual note or a little uh, thing for fans of the MCU to see. All these different places where she actually intends to do it. One was Asgard, one was Vormir, one was New York City, I think, right before everything, the battle for New York City. So, I mean, there was a lot of interesting little places that she sent those little bombs to. So, that part was actually really cool. Yeah, I mean, overall, I did. Um, I know I complained a lot about everything that took place on Loki this episode, but I did enjoy it. I just didn't understand specific moments and specific discrepancies that they intentionally put in there. Um, Maybe that'll be something they'll fix in later episodes. I really hope they do. Overall, I would give this a 7 out of 10. I still really enjoyed myself. I still felt like it was a really solid performance by the cast. But at the same time, there were those little problems with it. I say little, but to me, they're actually big problems. because there there are problems with the foundation of this episode and of this TV series. It's almost kind of like how I've complained about when we were doing our Walker episode reviews. It felt like um, if when something's wrong with the foundation, you can fix the house however you want, but it won't ever stand in a lot of ways, that the foundation is broken. And I feel like poor writing shows a bad foundation. And I'm starting to see a little bit of cracks in episode 2 where the writers are just not being consistent enough, or really factual enough, or not really taking into account the words that they use and the places that they use, or the analogies that they use for what it means for later on down the line when it comes to the MCU. That's something that, of course, that can be changed in the future, and hopefully it will start in episode 3. But guys, let me know what y'all think. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, guys, thanks for watching, and y'all take care.